All right, so hey everyone, welcome back to the deep dive. You come here because you want to wrap your head around some of these tough economic questions, the stuff that's going on in the world. And today, we got a really interesting one. We're diving into Japan, and we're going to be looking at this whole thing of their economic stagnation that's been going on for a while, decades, right?
Yeah.
And we've got some really thought-provoking material that you sent us. And, I think at the heart of it, there's this big question, right?
Yeah.
Was it something internal to Japan that caused this? Or were there some outside forces at play? Were they getting pushed around a little bit?
External pressure.
External pressures?
Big time.
Big time. Okay.
That's what this source is saying.
So this source is interesting because right away it says, forget about this whole falling prices thing.
Right.
That's not the main villain in this story.
It's like a symptom, not the cause.
Not the cause, okay. And instead it points the finger right at the U.S., saying, starting in the early 90s, the U.S. was basically messing with Japan's money, diluting their dollar holdings.
Diluting, yeah, that's the word.
That's the word. And, I was reading this and I was like, wow.
It's a strong claim.
It's a strong claim. And they're not talking about like a little bit of dilution either.
Yeah.
This source is saying over 90%.
90%.
Of Japan's dollar reserves just went poof.
Basically,
almost all of it.
Imagine all your savings.
Right.
And suddenly they're worth like pennies on the dollar.
It's like going to the bank.
Right.
And they tell you, oh, yeah, we lost all your money.
That's basically what happened.
Basically, yeah. And so, this source is saying that. This totally crippled Japan.
Crippled them, yeah.
On the global market.
Couldn't buy anything.
They couldn't buy anything. And it gets worse because this source is also saying
Keep going.
that anytime a Japanese industry start to get ahead, looking like they were going to be
taking the lead
in any sector, boom, sanctions.
Yeah.
Sanctioned.
Every time.
Every time. So they're saying this was a deliberate attempt to keep Japan down.
Yeah.
Like it was a strategy.
Strategy to hold them back.
To hold them back. Now, I do want to be fair. The source does talk about some internal things, too. Like, we always hear about how Japan has this really frugal lifestyle.
Frugality, yeah.
Right. And the source is acknowledging that,
Contribute.
that it's probably helps lead to deflation.
Even with low interest rates.
Yeah, even with low interest rates. So it's not like they're completely ignoring the internal stuff.
It's not just external.
Right. It's not just blaming the U.S.
Right.
But they are saying that Japan was, doing what it thought was best.
Investing.
By investing in what they saw.
As safe assets.
Secure foreign cash assets.
Things like the USD.
Yeah.
And this source is like, they were right to do that.
It's the right thing to do. That was the right move. But then, this is where it gets really interesting. Because they're saying the real problem was what they call U.S. fraud.
Fraud, yeah.
And underhanded tactics.
Underhanded tactics.
And they're basically saying that the U.S. robbed Japan through this dilution scheme. Yeah. And then they take it a step further and they're like, where did all that money go?
Where did it go?
Right. They're saying it went to Europe.
Yeah, Israel.
Ukraine. And they even say it indirectly. Helped people in Germany buy
luxury cars.
Fancy cars.
Fancy cars.
Yeah, they're connecting all these dots.
Connecting the dots.
And then even crazier.
It gets even crazier. They bring up Native Americans. And they're saying that this money that was taken from Japan was used by the U.S. to take out loans, buy land, and basically push Native Americans out.
Squeeze them out.
And then this is a direct quote from the source. Americans are not to be trusted.
Wow.
Now, we are not saying that we endorse this view.
No, absolutely not. We're just reporting what the source is saying. But it is pretty wild, right?
Pretty intense.
It is pretty intense. Now, the source does say that, economic development can also lead to deflation.
Because of abundance.
Because of abundance.
Yeah.
Too much stuff.
Too much stuff.
Lowers the price.
Lowers the prices, right. So, they are acknowledging
it's not black and white.
That it's not black and white.
Yeah.
But their main point is that it was the U.S.
The U.S. is the main driver.
That was the main driver.
Yeah.
They even say that Japan was just playing the game.
Playing the expansion game.
By trading their yen for dollars.
Right.
Which they saw as a good strategy.
Huh.
So to sum this all up, this source is basically saying, look, this wasn't about falling prices in Japan. It wasn't just about frugality. It was about the U.S. They were diluting Japan's money. They were using shady tactics. And they basically screwed Japan over.
Yeah.
And they're not mincing words about it.
No, they're not.
It's a pretty powerful take.
It's a very specific perspective on a complex issue.
I mean, it makes you think.
It does make you think about, what else is going on?
The bigger picture.
In the world.
Geopolitics.
History.
All of it.
And, how do we even know who to trust in this global system?
Right.
It's a big question.
So food for thought, right?
Food for thought.
As always, thanks for joining us for another deep dive.
Until next time.
Until next time.